Dig and Doug had received an emergency call from Merriweather Farm. "I can hear it from here," said Dig.
Me too, said Doug. Better get a move on before it blows up.
Farmer Stubble had to get all of his bales of hay into the barn, and his conveyor belt was making such a noise he had to block his ears with 2 turnips. Mrs. Stubble brought him his mug of coffee and had covered her ears with turnips as well. "Here you are, Ernest," she shouted. But of course, they couldn't hear each other. "Ernest! Ernest! Ernest!" It was no good. Suddenly, the machine finally broke, and Farmer Stubble saw his wife standing next to him. "What did you say, dear?" he said. "What?" she said. "I can't hear you, dear. I've got turnips in my ears," he said. "What?" she said. "I can't hear you. I've got turnips in my ears." It was hopeless. Neither could hear what the other was saying. Luckily, Dig and Doug arrived.
What's up with you two? Said Doug. And what have you got on your heads?
"What?" said Farmer Stubble. Doug saw what the problem was and removed the scarf so he could hear again. Then Farmer Stubble explained the trouble he'd been having with his machine and how he had to get the bales of hay into the barn. Doug told him not to worry and that all he needed were his tools and a cold drink. So while Mrs. Stubble went for the drinks, Doug went to fetch his tools.
Stand back! This could be tricky.
I'll go and help Mrs. Stubble with the drinks, I think, said Farmer Stubble. Good luck. Give that a little turn, Dig, while I give this a little tap. Well done. Try her now. Try again.
He just couldn't think how to fix it.
Tricky, said Doug.
"Very," said Dig. Doug was also beginning to lose his temper. "Oh, you fixed it," said Farmer Stubble, hearing his machine humming nicely.
Piece of cake, eh, Dig?
said Doug. "Nothing to it, Doug." Farmer Stubble gave them their drinks, asked them to help load the bales of hay, and they agreed.
To you.
"To me,"
Stand back.
and up she goes.
To you.
"To me,"
Stand back.
and up she goes.
To you.
"To me,"
Stand back.
and up she goes. Just as they finished, Mrs. Stubble arrived with another tray of cold drinks. "Oh, just what I need,"
Me too.
said Doug. But then something terrible happened. "Oh! Oh! Oh, dear! Ernest! Oh! Oh! Oh!" she said as she travelled upwards. Farmer Stubble couldn't believe his eyes. "Mildred, what are you doing?" Luckily, they managed to stop the machine before it was too late. Poor Mrs. Stubble. She wasn't happy. "I'm not happy, Ernest," she said to her husband. "I can't move. I don't like heights. Get me down." "Right, oh dear," said Farmer Stubble, not knowing what to do at all. In fact, no one had a clue how to get Mrs. Stubble down. And then Daisy appeared in the yard. "What are you doing, Mrs. Stubble? Trying to fly?" And when Doug explained how they'd fixed Farmer Stubble's machine and helped him get his hay bales in before it rained, which it hadn't yet, but might any minute, and how Mrs. Stubble had brought them drinks, sat on the machine, and the next thing they knew, she was stuck up there, Daisy came up with a plan.
"Is this plan of yours safe, Daisy?"
asked Mrs. Stubble. "Don't worry," said Dig.
"Everything's under control, Mrs. Stubble," said Doug.
Poor Mrs. Stubble. She didn't feel anything was under control at all. And as Dig, Doug and Daisy agreed plans, she wondered what they were going to do. "Right," said Daisy suddenly, and explained what would happen next. The basket on the ground was full of turnips. The one in the air was full of Mrs. Stubble. As they unloaded the turnips, the basket on the ground would get lighter, which meant it would go up. And as it went up, Mrs. Stubble would come down. And, if all went well, she'd be back on the ground in no time.
"What if it doesn't go well?"
asked Mrs. Stubble.
"You'll be down even quicker,"
said Dig.
"Can't lose either way,"
said Doug. And so they began. Mrs. Stubble could hardly look. Slowly, the pile of turnips in the basket went down. But still, Mrs. Stubble stayed in the air. And then, suddenly, the basket began to move.
"One more should do it,"
said Doug. Daisy took out another turnip.
Still, one more,
said Dig. Very carefully, Daisy took out another, and everyone held their breath. Mrs. Stubble was so frightened she hadn't realized she was down.
"It's all right,"
said Daisy.
"You can look now."
"Oh, thank goodness," she said, and didn't even wait to get out of the basket. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you so much."
"Gently does it, Mildred,"
said Farmer Stubble, lifting his wife out. And as Daisy hugged Mrs. Stubble, the other basket, with all the turnips in, came back down again.